Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second day of our division research training. Before I discuss to you my topic entitled Scope and Limitation of the Study, let me first introduce myself. I am Cindi and Alejandrino, Teacher 2 from Maragondon National High School and currently the Secretariat of Maragondon Municipal Care. For the objectives, at the end of this lecture, the participants should be able to first, define scope and limitation. Second, distinguish limitation from the limitation. Let us unlock the definition of the two important elements in basic research. The first one is scope. It composes the total area of the study, establishing the parameters and indicating the cutoffs of the projects. For example, you want to conduct a phenomenological study on the lived experiences of the learners, the teachers, and the parents during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is impossible, however, to cover every aspect of that particular topic. In some case, perhaps. So what you will do is to just narrow down the scope into a certain target population. Let's say if you're from the junior high school and you are teaching grade 7 level, you will then consider the grade 7 learners, their parents, and their teachers as the participants or respondents of your study. And then you will have to conduct your study in your school. And then the duration would be for about, let's say, 2 to 3 months or 5 to 6 months. Kasi it's a phenomenological research. So, mahaba-habang pag-aaral yan. That already form the limitations of your study. Also, do not forget to indicate the reasons why you have chosen grade 7. Why in your school? Why 2 to 3 months or let's say 6 months? Alright? Limitation, on the other hand, narrows down the scope into reasonable area of study, which is manageable but wide enough to permit careful treatment. Actually, limitations are shortcomings, conditions, or influences in your study in which the researcher has no control. It is already beyond the researcher's control. They place restrictions on the methodology and conclusion of your study. By the way, any limitation that influences or affects the results of your study, it should be clearly stated or mentioned under the scope and limitation. In identifying the nature of the study, it is best to consider the area and time coverage, area of sampling, and the scope of treatment, as these will provide the information concerning the who, what, when, where, and how of your study. In other words, you have to answer the WH questions. What to write in the scope? You may consider the following: description of subjects, variables, tests, instruments, and procedures, as well as the special equipment, training, time and duration of the study, and analytical procedures. What about the potential limitations of the study? These could be the approach, design, method, or technique that you have used, sampling problems, uncontrolled variables, errors in test administration or data handling, generalizability of data, representativeness of subjects, compromises or let's say threats to internal and external validity. And then we have the reliability and validity of research instruments. Okay, I hope that those elements or factors it will be further elaborated or discussed as we go through with the session, especially during the methodology part. Now let us have the difference between limitations and delimitations. How do we differentiate the two? Limitations refer to the elements or influences in which the researcher has, in big letters, no control. I've already mentioned of this a while ago, the moment I defined what limitation is. The limitations, on the other hand, refer to the elements or influences in which the researcher can control. Another point of difference is that limitations are potential weaknesses in your study. The limitations are characteristics that limit the scope and define the boundaries of the study. Limitations explain how the researcher intends to deal with the elements or influences so as not to affect the outcome or the result of your study. And the limitations explicate the criteria. It explains the limitations explain the criteria, standards, or measures on how you choose the topic, factors, characteristics, elements of each research section. Actually, that is already the summary of what I have discussed a while ago, just to cap off. Okay. Now, what is the big picture of all these? Why do we need to consider the scope and limitation in our basic research? It's all about credibility. Simply because it will add credibility onto our research. So, dapat maayos na nailatag mo doon lahat, yung scope ng study mo, as well as yung potential weaknesses ng study na kinonduct mo. It's all about credibility. Okay? As we all know, credibility is one important factor that we have to consider in writing basic research. Now, I have here a sample scope and limitation of the study. Actually, this is from Ma'am Mayan. I asked for her permission at pinayagan niya naman po ako. I actually saw this on the research journal. So, nagpaalam ako kay Ma'am Mayan kung pwede gamitin ko kung kanyang scope and limitation there. So, as you can see, the scope here is represented by the dark blue colored text, whereas the limitation is represented by the dark red colored text. Okay? This study used the quantitative content analysis to explore and find patterns on the 90 research reports and communications submitted by the municipal city research committees or MRCs in the SDO Cavite province, Philippines for school year 2019 to 2020. The records followed initial data of the 685 researched proposals as guided by the Division Memo number 236 series of 2019. The data extracted focused on the demographics of the personnel in terms of the following designations: teacher, master teacher, head teacher, and school principals. This study also looked into the research production data for the duration mentioned above. This study is limited in the comparison of the demographic profiles of the researchers with the current demographics of school personnel, the statistics on the research proposed, finished and presented at the division level, and the generation of insights relevant to planning of the next research management process. So that would be all for my topic. I would like to end this presentation with the research hugot that I saw in www.wattpad.com. Let me share this to you. Mayroon tayong 5 dahilan kung bakit mas maganda ang research kaysa sa love life mo. Una, ang research dinedefend. Pangalawa, ang research ay may ethical considerations. Pangatlo, ang research ay may clear and specific objectives. Pang-apat, ang research ay may proposal. At panglima, ang research ay may scope and limitation. Alam mo kung saan ka lulugar. That's all. Thank you so much, and to God be the glory.